In 6 weeks, I'll have a birthday. I'll be turning 63. That matters because it makes me the same age my mother was when she died of cancer in 1984, 63. That number's been in my thoughts a lot recently. What was she thinking about dying at 63? That kind of lifespan. She never shared them with me other than to share her terse comment, when your number's up, your number's up. I think of every day at 63 and beyond as a gift of life at this point. What will I do with what my mother was denied? My father, on the other hand, lived to be 92 at the outer edge of the longevity tables. In the time of the pandemic and other threats, thinking about the end of our time becomes an urgent matter. I'm especially considering about the where part of dying. No, not the circumstances of it or the hospital, but where will I be buried? When my divorced parents died, 34 years apart, they were cremated. Mom's older sister arranged for a headstone for her in the Jewish cemetery in Gonzales, Texas, while my father is in the Veterans Cemetery in Rockland County, New York. I've considered the idea of burial in Texas, although I haven't lived there in 40 years. You see, my mother, her parents, her grandparents, and cousins are all buried in Gonzales, a small town on the road from San Antonio to Houston. But the place looks out of space, and I've never been able to learn who actually operates it and controls the interments there, if any. Well, then there's also the Hebrew Cemetery in Hempstead, Texas, which is north of Houston. That's where my great-great-grandfather, Rabbi Chaim Schwartz, is buried. I once called Hempstead City Hall for details about the place, and I learned that the Schwartz family, not the city, controls the cemetery. I got the name of a cousin, so I emailed him in Houston with my estate planning idea and said, "You got any spaces there?" I never heard anything back from him. So I know I need to be realistic. The notion of shipping my remains from the Northeast to Texas is something that I agree is fanciful, wasteful, and wildly impractical. Traditional Jewish practice calls for a fast, simple interment. No cremation, no fancy caskets, no flowers. You leave the world the way you came into it. I could do that up here in the Northeast, but not in Gonzales. Maybe my partner and I will move to a warmer place in a few years, and I'll join a synagogue and they'll have a cemetery, and maybe we could buy joint plots there. And if my number comes up before then, I don't know. I wonder if this anxiety about where I'm buried covers a deeper concern about how I'm remembered and who will be remembering me. My family these days is scattered all over. My son in Massachusetts, my brother in Florida, other cousins in Texas still. 50, 100 years ago, a family cemetery in a place like Gonzales made a lot of sense because everybody lived within 100 or 200 miles of the place. It just was practical. Growing up in Texas, Mom took my brother and me to the cemetery to pay our respects. From those boyhood memories, I carried away a feeling of family, of being rooted in a specific place with specific people, even if I didn't really know any of them. Gonzales and Hempstead are old cemeteries where future generations can go, place stones on the graves, and see the names of those who came before. That is something I find comforting. But now I live 1,800 miles away in the Northeast, and in my heart I know I need to make plans for up here, not down there. Burial in the Northeast, with my partner, that could work. Without her or other families nearby, well, a sense of cold isolation washes over me at the thought. Would I be alone, unvisited, unknown, unremembered, surrounded by other people's families, not my own? I don't know. But what if that's not the question I should be asking? What if something else should really be the focus? I know that stones and soil are one thing, but that the life I try to live can outlast them. Maybe the better question is, how will people remember me, not where will I be buried? I want people maybe to remember that I studied sacred texts the best I could, that I did acts of kindness, that I was a good role model, a good loving father, brother, partner, friend, that I made the most of the gifts that God gave me in the time I have, however much that is. If people remember any of that about me, I should be satisfied. So in these pandemic times, I think every day is a gift to treasure, especially now as I'm turning 63, that fateful number. I have no answer to the question of where, but I am trying to focus on the question of how I live. And when my number's up, well, God only knows what's going to happen then. Thank you.